and thanks for your time. I mean, we know for sure that you're applauding the resignation of Mark Lamberti, but it's not the end of the story, is it? There are lessons to be learned from this.
Absolutely. And firstly, let's salute Adila Chowan, the black woman who was on the receiving end of what was clearly a sexist and racist statement directed at her. And let's salute her for her tenacity and for the fact that she had such a mental strength to take on what could be seen as a big giant in every respect, a CEO of many years, a man who plays leadership roles in the business leadership South Africa, one of the most prominent leaders in the business circles in South Africa. She took her on. She took him on, rather, and she won after 2 years of a battle in the court. And we hope that many women are taking notes. Because let's face it, in the private sector, we're still facing a huge crisis of women being victims of discrimination on the basis of their gender and of their race.
But also disrespect.
Absolutely.
This case as well,
this was such an insult.
Yeah.
I mean, to just randomly call a person who have a genuine grievance that she's being discriminated on the basis of her race and on the basis of her gender, and then refer to that person as an affirmative action or employment equity appointee was such an insult, not only to Adila Chowan, but to every woman who holds a position of authority.
It's also worrying, Mr. Vavi, and let's look at the deeper problem here, is that this has happened in the first place, in the year, well, it started in 2015 when we saw that she had been fired after laying this grievance against Lamberti, which means there were others who could have held him to account but didn't, so this was allowed to happen. She became the ultimate victim in all of this. That this has happened in 2018 also now, from then till now, in this time in our democracy, that he's not the only one who would have taken this decision at the time in 2015 to fire her. And like you say, he leads other business leaders, that there are others who would have supported him in that decision and didn't say, listen, that was not the right thing to say or do.
If you look at his statement, even now, he says he have received so many messages of support from his colleagues, because I guess that it is a wide mentality problem amongst the leaders of the private sector firms that it is okay. You can just call another person an appointee of affirmative action instead of recognizing their strength, their talents, and their profession that they have climbed on the ladder of the company to occupy the positions that they occupy. And to want to use that now to deny her an opportunity to ascend to even higher positions in the workplace was absolutely wrong. And we are happy that he has fallen on his sword. And we think that that was the right thing to do, because it should send a signal to all of these others. Because the private sector, let's face it, is still a male, white male-dominated industry. They call the shots there. And black people in general complain bitterly that the prevalences of discrimination against them are still unacceptably very high.
And black women even more.
Black women then becomes...
Well, he's now saying, and he's urging business leaders to redress the past with sensitivity and humility. I mean, how are we even supposed to even absorb those words?
Can you believe it?
After...
If this was not coming after such a lengthy battle where he was denying that he insulted and that he injured the person of Adila Chowan, we will accept that and say these are wise words indeed. But in this particular case, we have to dismiss them, because he fought in every step of the... In fact, he got this person dismissed, can you believe it, for complaining that she is being discriminated on the basis of her race and gender. And after 2 years of a battle in the High Court, there he comes now as an evangelist and to tell everybody of how they should be behaving. We reject that with all of the contempt they deserve.
So your message to other women, and I know you touched on it a little earlier, for those who, I mean, she's been fighting this battle since 2015, possibly earlier as well. I mean, this came to a head for her at that time, to not give up. To where can they seek the help that they need to actually take structures like this down?
I say that.
And I say structures because it's not just one person.
Adila Chawan now says she's studying law so that she can continue the fight, not for herself but for the rest of other women in the country. I think that's a way to go. I think that we should remember that when she passes her degrees in 2019. We hope that we'll remember that there's a very strong woman in the Western Cape, Cape Town, who stood the ground against a giant, and she won. Women must be motivated, must be inspired, must follow the example. This is a good example to follow in each and every workplace where discrimination still takes place randomly without any of the people who discriminate against these women facing any kind of consequences. And
very quickly, I want to know from you, what do we do with the likes of Mark Lamberti? He goes on, whatever he chooses to do after this. What about others who may not be as obvious in having the same attitude, but their actions are flowing underneath? Subtle. Yeah.
Subtle. Look, our experience from the trade union point of view is that even in 2018, 25 years into our democracy, racism, sexism, patriarchy, and bullyism is still so rife in many workplaces. The women in particular are facing a glass ceiling on the basis of either their race or the basis of their gender. The people who are then found guilty following the processes that have been followed in the case of Mark Lamberti must be shunned by society. And society must make an example, as I think that the society have made an example against the likes of Mombeck and Sparrow and all others. They deserve the worst from all of us. We can't continue as a democracy to be seen to have such a soft approach against people who are subtle or overly racist. And
they resign and the problem goes away. Yeah. All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much, Saftu General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi, on the fall of Mark Lamberti. Sport coming up.